Okay, so we are going to do some work in chapter 4. Okay, now you're going to say, well, why are we working in chapter 4? You know, there are other sections that we need to do. Okay, well, I know that you got some of the stuff done in chapter 1. Okay, and then chapters 2 and 3 are both really related. Okay, and I think that I'm going to go over I'm going to start in chapter 4 because number 1, we don't need chapters 2 and 3 to do 4. It's not necessarily that sequential. And I think that when the new teacher is hired, doing 2 and 3 together is going to be helpful. Okay, it's all geometric concepts. I think those concepts could probably work for the entire 8th grade. Okay, so I think that we're going to start in chapter 4 and talk a little bit about slope and intercept and those types of things. Okay, so I am on, in your textbook, I am on page 142. Okay, so if you can't see this on the video, by going to page 142, you can kind of follow along. This textbook does a nice job in some of the units or the sections of giving you this essential question to start with. And when I think it's a good one, we'll start with that, okay? And other times I might start with something else if I think I have a better way of explaining it. But in any event, this one says, how can you recognize a linear equation and how can you draw its graph? Okay, and that's what's called the essential question for this section. Okay, so I don't know that you necessarily need to write that in your notes, but you can if you'd like to write that in there in front of section 4.1. You certainly can do that. So we're going to talk about this activity here that says graphing a linear equation. And it says work with a partner. For this purpose, I think we'll probably just do it individually. If your teacher decides that in your classroom that they would like you to do it with a partner, that's fine. That's fine with me. But I'm going to do it as if we're doing it individually. So they give us this equation. I'm going to write the equation bigger on the board because that might be hard for you to see, and especially if you don't have your textbook with you. So we're going to say y equals 1/2 x plus 1. Okay, y equals 1/2 x plus 1. And they give us a chart. And they say up top here that this is solution points. Don't know if you can see that off of the board. I'm going to look and see. I think you can. I think you can see that. So let's work with that. Okay, let's work with that. I got the equation here. It's solution points. And it says use the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 1 to complete the table. And this is a table. Okay? It says choose any 2 x values and find the y values. So if we're thinking about this x and we're thinking about this y, we consider x to be what's called an independent variable because you can pick any x that you want. Okay? You can pick any x that you want. So we call that an independent variable. And the y is called a dependent variable. Okay, so we have what's called an independent variable and a dependent variable. So the x, you can pick any one you want. I'm going to be honest with you, I like to pick 0 a lot because when you pick 0, it's usually an easy point to plug in. And if we can make things easier for ourselves, we might as well take advantage of that. So here's the 0. I've got to plug in a 0. I'll do the work over here. There's really no place for the work on that chart. So it says 1/2 times x. So I told you that I was plugging in a 0. So 1/2 times 0 plus 1. What's half of 0? Half of 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0. So that's going to be 0, and 0 plus 1 is going to be 1. So when I plug in a 0 for x, the value of this equation is 1. Okay? And now I'm going to pick another point. I can pick any point that I want for that. Okay? Any point that I want. I could pick 1, I could pick 2, I could pick 3, I could pick, like I said, I could pick any point that I want. Now, because I have a fraction here, and because this fraction has an even number on the bottom, it has a 2 on the bottom, I'm going to pick a number that's going to work well with that 2. I'm going to pick a 2. I'm going to plug in a 2. Because then I don't have to really deal with the fractions. I'm picking numbers that are compatible. Numbers that are compatible or numbers that work well together. Okay, so I'm going to take half of 2. Okay, half of 2. Half of 2 is 1. And then we have 1 plus 1 is 2. So I go over here, and I had, for an x value, I had a 2. And for my y value, I've got 1 plus 1, which is 2. So I plugged in a 2, and I got a 2. It says write these two ordered pairs given by the table. They're called solution points. So here's our solutions. Okay? I could actually write those as what's called a set of ordered pairs. Okay? When you have ordered pairs, I think I can write over here. I think you guys can still see this. When you have an ordered pair, you have an x and a y. Okay? And when I plugged in an x, I got a 1. And when I plugged in a 2, I got a 2. So they want me to graph those two. Okay, so I go here to my graph, and I graph 0, 1, and I graph 2, 2, and it says to draw a line through those points. So I'm going to do my best. You guys would do much better with a piece of graph paper. Okay, there's my line. Okay, so I have my solution points. Okay, my ordered pairs are 0, 1, and 2, 2. I go to my graph, I draw my line, and there it is. Okay, so that line is not the best line. And with the technology that I have up here, it is a little bit more difficult. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take one more shot at it to see if I can do a better job, okay, of drawing a straight line there. But I'm not going to make any promises, okay, because here's 0, 0, 1, okay, and then I had 2, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. So again, I'm not going to make any promises, but I'm going to do my best to try to draw a straight line there. And it looks pretty straight. And it says, find a different point on the line that's a solution. So I know, because if I'm looking at this and I wanted to plug in a 4, and I go over here to my equation, and I plug in a 4, okay? So I'm taking half of 4 plus 1, and half of 4 is 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So when I plugged in a 4, I got a 3. So I kind of knew that ahead of time, and that's where I knew that my graph was not exact, because 4, 3 would be right here, and if I make my point there, the line kind of hits it, okay? But when I will make sure that you guys, when we're doing these, that you guys will have graph paper that you can do a really good graph, okay? So I'm going to show you that on a piece of graph paper. So just bear with me for a second, please. So here's a piece of graph paper, and I am going to do a better job of drawing those points. So I will be off the camera for a second here, and I take just bear with me, I'm just getting a different piece of graph paper. Okay, so here is a fresh piece of graph paper. And And I'm going to make my two axes. Okay. I have my x-axis, I have my y-axis, and the points I had were 0, 1, and then I had 2, 2. Okay, and I am going to make a straight line with that. And to make sure that I make a nice, exact straight line with that, I'm going to use a ruler. You could always use the side of your book, okay? You could use the side of your book. You could use anything that's straight that's going to make that a nice, straight line. Okay, and I guess you can see that I am not the world's best drawer of straight lines. Art was never my thing. Not that drawing a line is really art, but you can see that's a challenge for me. So I'm going to try it one more time to make that nice straight line. Looks like it would be right there. Use this, and I've got a straight line. Okay, so we're going to talk in this section about graphing lines. Okay, we are going to talk all about graphing lines. So this next stuff is stuff I want to make sure that you really have your good notes on. Okay, because you could see this stuff in your homework. You could see this stuff on an assessment, on a Friday assessment. Okay, we're going to try to have some assessments on Fridays for you, so that we have a way of getting you guys grades, and we're hoping that everyone's going to do well. And part of doing well is practicing this classwork, okay, and doing the homework. Those are the two biggest points to doing well at this stuff. I'm not going to kid you. Okay, that's where it's at. So let's start some notes. So this is chapter 4, section 1. Okay, chapter 4, section 1. And what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about graphing lines. Okay, let me just see the exact title. Graphing linear equations. So graphing linear equations. Okay, this is something that the sub will be looking for in your notes to give you credit for your classwork. So it's really important that you have this and you have the stuff that's on the board here. Okay, so a linear equation is an equation. A linear equation is an equation. Okay, a linear equation is an equation whose graph is a line. Okay, so someone gives you a linear equation, and you want to know, it gives you an equation, you want to know if it's linear or not. Okay, you want to know if it's linear. So you look and you say, well, graph it. You can graph it and tell if it's linear or not. Okay? A linear equation is of the form y equals mx plus b, where we're going to talk about this being my slope and this being my intercept. Okay, so some examples of linear equations might look like this. Y equals 4x plus 6. Y equals negative 1/2 x plus 1, which is one we just kind of like one we just did. This is an example that's not a linear equation. Okay, not. Make sure you put in there, not linear equation. Okay, let's see. Y equals x squared. That is not a linear equation. Okay, what makes that not a linear equation is this 2. Okay, that's x squared. That doesn't look like this. This is what a linear equation looks like. So we take our equation, we say, does it look like this? If it looks like that, then it's a linear equation. That doesn't look like that. Y equals, I don't know, 1 divided by x. Not a linear equation. Okay, I can't write it so it looks like that. Or xy equals 17. Doesn't show my x and y multiplied together. That's not a linear equation. Okay, so those are just some tips moving forward on how to identify a linear equation, but we're going to look at it and we're going to test to see if it's a linear equation by graphing it. Okay, so I'm going to erase this. If you didn't get it, just pause the video. You can write it down. Okay, and so the points, all the points on the line are called solutions. Okay, so all the points that are on the lines are called solutions of the equation. Okay, you're going to have more than one solution. Okay, you're going to have an infinite amount of solutions. So the first way that we are going to graph linear equations is by making a table. We're making what's called an XY chart. Okay, so again, anytime that I'm erasing, you're like, wait a minute, I'm not done. Wait, you can't erase that. Just pause it. Pause the video. Copy the stuff down. We're going to move forward. Okay? So, let's say I had this. Y equals 2x minus 3. And I am going to make an XY chart for this. An XY chart to graph this equation, because I think it's a linear equation. I do. Okay, so we're going to do this, then I'm going to pause the video, because when I get the videos and I upload them, it's easier if those videos are around 20 minutes or so. So we're getting close to that 20-minute mark. So when you're graphing a linear equation, you can pick any points you want for your x. That's called your independent variable. Okay, independent variable. Okay, it doesn't depend on anything. This is called your dependent, the y is your dependent variable. Okay, and the reason it's your dependent variable is because whatever you get for y depends on what you plugged in for x. And another way to think of your independent variable, your x, is another name for that is domain. You'll get to that at some point. And your y is thought of as your range. Okay, and that's stuff that we'll talk about eventually. So, because you can pick any value you want, I always like to pick 0. And the reason I like to pick 0 is there's a couple reasons. One, it's easy to graph. 0 is right there. Okay, right on, it's going to be on this axis somewhere when your x is 0. And another reason I like to pick 0 is because it's easy to plug in. It's easy to plug in. So I'm going to pick 0, 1, and 2. Now I could have picked anything that I wanted. I could have picked anything I wanted. I could have picked 0, 1, 2. I could have picked 175, 176, 177. But I'm going to tell you right now, you wouldn't want to graph that. You wouldn't want to graph 175, 176, 177. So we're going to pick some nice easy numbers here. And we're going to plug them in. So we've got 2 times 0 plus 3. 2 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 3 is 3. So when x is, oh, I'm sorry, it's minus 3. I copied that wrong. And 0 minus 3 is a negative 3. So when I plug in a 0, I get a negative 3. Let's plug in a 1. 2 times 1 minus 3. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And let's plug in a 2. So that's going to be 2 times 2 minus 3. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So we go to our graph. And I plug my points in. 0, -3. That means I go over 0 and I go down 3. 1, 2, 3, and I put